welcome back to another episode of Inside Number 23, my podcast which is all about knitting and sewing and generally living the craftiest life possible. My name is Katie, but you can find me pretty much everywhere on social media as Miss Ravlery. I'm most active on Instagram, and that does now include Twitter. I am starting to use Twitter again for the podcast. I'm giving it a little try, seeing how I get on. So do find me. I'm also Miss Ravlery on Twitter if you want to follow me there, and we'll see how that goes. I also have a Ravlery group for the podcast, which you can find by searching Inside Number 23 on the groups tab on Ravlery, and there you can get involved with things like giveaways, knit-alongs, all of that good stuff. In terms of show notes, you can find everything in the down bar, just down here. That's where I put all the information about everything that I talk about. And if you want to get in touch with me regarding anything to do with the podcast, please do just drop me an email. My email is katie@insidenumber23.com, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So here we are again, another episode of Inside Number 23, and this probably feels like there's been pretty much no time at all between the previous episode and this one, and that's for a very good reason. There pretty much is no time between the previous episode and this one. Various things caused my upload of last week's recording to go up very, very late, but I wanted desperately to get the podcast recorded today and uploaded as soon as possible so I could get back onto my regular schedule of uploads on a Friday for you all. Everything's been a little bit all over the place recently, and I wanted to kind of jump back into our regular schedule so that things would be more consistent from now onwards. So I am very, very pleased to be back with you again a little bit sooner than usual. But what that obviously means is because there's been a very, very short space amount of time between the last episode and this one, in terms of the actual crafty content that I have, we're a little bit more limited. I haven't had a huge amount of time to get a lot of crafting done, but I do have some lovely things to share with you. But this may be a little bit of a shorter episode just because of that. But I have been working on some other bits and pieces, which I'm very, very excited to share with you. So before we get started, hello and welcome back to any of my long-term viewers, and hi if this is your first time ever checking out the podcast. It's really, really lovely to spend a little bit of crafty time with you all today, and I hope you stick around. We're a pretty nice lot here, I think, although obviously I am biased. I do have a fair bit of admin to kick off the episode. So I'm going to start off with reminding you all that the Harry Potter Cow, which has now come to an end, the entry thread for the grand prize drawing will be open until the end of this month. So if you still have to enter your finished objects for that, please head over to the Ravlery group and get that done. I'm so excited to be able to share some of these lovely prizes with you, and yeah, you are all amazing, and that thread just makes me so happy. If you want to be completely and utterly inspired when it comes to Harry Potter knitting, you really should check out that thread. I have a little bit of exciting news to share with you regarding knit-alongs for the future of the podcast, because I am very, very excited to be announcing the next knit-along for Inside Number 23. Hooray! Yay! It's really, really exciting. Thank you to everybody who's been suggesting various things about knit-alongs. What I will say to start off with, the Andes Satterlund will be coming back to the channel, but that's probably going to be happening later in the year. I think towards the end of summer would be a good time to kick that off. But I do have a knit-along which will be starting at the beginning of February, running throughout February, March and April, and it is another knit-along for one of my favourite designers of all time. And if you know me, you can probably guess who it is, but this was actually a suggestion by my lovely friend Katie Green. So hi Katie, if you're watching. I will be hosting the Michele Wang-along, or as I like to call it, the Wang-along, because it just sounds really amazing and lovely. So yes guys, Michele Wang. A lot of you are asking for a knit-along with a different designer, and I can't think of a better designer to have a knit-along for. So like I said, this will be kicking off on the 1st of February and running throughout February, March and April of this year. And the goal is to knit a garment, specifically a garment that Michele Wang has designed. She has designed a lot of accessories, but this is specifically a garment along for one of Michelle's sweaters or cardigans. So I hope that you are as excited about that as I am. I am so excited. Now, I know Michelle's garments are a little bit intimidating. There are some people who might be a little bit put off because they think, oh, it might be a little bit too hard to cast on one of Michelle's garments because they're very involved and beautiful patterns. But I want this to be an opportunity for you guys to try something different and for us all to kind of push ourselves to make these beautiful, intricate garments which are just so beautiful. So let me kind of explain a couple of the ground rules. So it is a 3-month knit along, but it's entirely fine if you do not finish your garment within that time. I will be drawing prizes, most likely from the chatter thread and the finished object thread. At this point, I'm not even sure if we will be having a finished object thread, because I know that 3 months to knit a garment of this kind of size and intensity for some of the larger garments that Michelle has designed is just not feasible for some people. I think 3 months is a good kind of estimate for some people. Will probably be able to finish a garment within that time, but that's really not what this knit along is about. It's about celebrating Michelle as a designer and all of us just really enjoying her stunning patterns. So please don't feel that you have to finish something within that time. Literally, if you just start something and enjoy knitting on it and share that in the chatter thread, which I'll open in the Ravelry group, you could be eligible to win prizes. Also, if you currently have a whip in progress that Michelle has designed, so if you have a sweater or a cardigan of hers that is less than 50% done, then you can definitely use that for the knit along. Like I said, this is about enjoying Michelle's patterns, possibly getting some languishing whips that you might have started of hers out from the kind of project bags that they've been squirreled away in, and just enjoy knitting on them, and for us to do that together. So I will definitely be knitting on my row cardigan that I've already started. It's already in progress, but it's way less than 50% done. So I will be knitting on that. And I'm also tempted to cast on a new project, mostly because my friend Hannah-Lisa shared a picture of her beautiful sweater. It's the Doughnut sweater, I believe it's called, but it's gorgeous cabled cropped thing, and I just think it's beautiful, and I would really love to be able to cast that on as well. So all things considered, I may have 2 Michele Wang projects going on whilst we are doing the Wang-along, but yes, please don't feel that you have to finish, and it's something that you can really take at your own pace. If you think that you'll only get a sleeve or a back of a sweater knit within that time, then that's absolutely fine. So don't let that put you off. In terms of prizes and all of that kind of information, I will start talking about that properly towards the beginning of the knit along. But for now, have a little search through Michelle's patterns, pick something that you would like, and I will open the chatter thread in the Ravelry group as soon as possible so that we can all get excited about which Michelle garments we shall be knitting over the next 3 months. Yay! So yeah, we have some major plans for things going forward. It's all very exciting, but I think it's about time that I kickstart the episode by telling you guys what I'm wearing this week. I'm pretty happy. I'm wearing an entirely me-made outfit this week. This is a blouse hack of the Bleuet dress by Deer and Doe. I made this last year in this gorgeous rifle paper coat fabric, which I picked up when I was in New York for Vogue Knitting Live. I absolutely love this blouse, and as I always say, I want to make many more because it's so cute, but I'm actually pairing it today with my Chuck sweater. Talking about Andy Satterlund and how much I love her and her patterns, this was the first Andy Satterlund pattern that I ever knit. It is the Chuck sweater. It is so cute. I really do love how this sweater turned out, and I wear it an awful lot. It's knit in wool of the Andes in the cadet colourway, and I do really want to cast on another version of this sweater at some point. The reason behind this is that the more that I wear it, the more that I think I should have gone down a needle size, in terms of the fact that a lot of the stitches are quite open, which doesn't really produce the most pleasing aesthetic when you're wearing it over the top of something like a blouse, because you can see through it a little bit, but you know, we learn, we live and learn, and I really love wearing this. I'm also wearing on my bottom half, which you can't really see because this is super awkward, my Madeleine skirt. There it is. It's a pattern by Victory Patterns. I've had it for donkey's years. It's got massive pockets. I really love wearing it, and yeah, it's just a really nice ensemble outfit. Makes me very happy. So yay for the me-made wardrobe. So moving on to what I have been knitting this week, to what's on my needles. And as I kind of hinted about towards the beginning of this episode, I've been fairly monogamous over the past few days, and I've really only been knitting on one specific project. And I've just been knitting on this one project because I'm getting to the point now where I'm utterly desperate for it to be off the needles. It's one of my Make 9 projects for this year, and you guessed it, it is the forest cardigan. And guys, I have knit the entire body and sleeves of this cardigan now. It is a beast. Look at it. There's sleeve number 1. Here is sleeve number 2. Oh my goodness, isn't it just, it's just amazing. So the way that this sweater is put together is that it is knit top down, and then you seam everything, sew everything together, and then you knit the neckband, which goes around the entire cardigan from the bottom all the way up around the neck and all the way around on the other side. So I have done, I would say, probably 90% of the knitting on this now, because the entire body is done. There's my little progress keeper. I will need to take that off because I'm going to be blocking that this evening, blocking the cardigan, not the progress keeper. But I am so happy with this. I finished up the second sleeve just last night, and I couldn't be happier with how it looks. It has this incredible cabled pattern which runs all the way down the sleeve, and I just love it. It looks gorgeous, and in particular I'm so happy that I decided to use this yarn for this project. This is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes Tweed, so like Wool of the Andes that I have in my Chuck sweater, which incidentally lasts so well and hardly pills at all and still looks really lovely, even though I knit this 2 years ago now and I've worn it an awful lot. So it's a testament to Wool of the Andes. I think that it does wear very, very well. And I just think that having this pattern with the garter stitch, which I love because it's a dream to knit, and it's going to be just the squishiest, coziest cardigan in the world when it's finished. Together with these cables, the colour just looks incredible. I just love it. For a cardigan that's relatively simple in its design, having this yarn that is full of kind of depth and texture is a real treat. So I'm very, very happy with how this has turned out. Like I said, it will need a good blocking. The entire thing will need to be blocked, dried and seamed before I pick up the stitches for the neckband. And then this will be finished. I hope that it will be finished by the end of January. That would be an incredible project to have completed in January this year. I mean, that would just be amazing. But for now, I'm just loving the fact that it's been such a joy to work on, and I will miss working on this when it's off the needles and it's ready to wear, but I just think I'm going to wear it to death because it's gorgeous. Plus it will be nice not having to cart this massive project around with me in order to knit on it. It has been very much a homebound project for the past week or so because of the size of it. But yeah, I love it, and it has pockets. I mean, what's not to love? Let's be honest. What is not to love with this? But yes, I know that there are quite a few of you who have cast this project on after seeing my version of it, and I hope that you love it as much as I did because it's just marvellous and such a fun knit. So yes, more forest cardigans in the world please, because it's just spectacular. So believe it or not, that's actually the only project that I've had on my needles this week. I told you, no time has passed seemingly whatsoever since the last episode, but that hasn't stopped me doing a little bit of dream knitting this week, because obviously the end of this sweater is in sight now. The end of my incredibly beautiful but massive forest cardigan is definitely in sight, and I've been toying with the idea of what to cast on next. I do obviously have my Chana sweater that I have been working on, although I need to cake up my yarn. I still haven't done that, and until I've done that I can't finish that sweater. So obviously I've been thinking about what other projects I could start, and to be honest it's a bit of a no-brainer because I've been wanting to work on this project for the longest time. It's another one of my Make 9 projects for my knitting, and I can't wait to get it cast on. It is the Soiree sweater, which was originally from the anniversary edition of Pom Pom Quarterly, their issue 21, and I'm going to be knitting it in this yarn. This yarn, which is the best yarn in the world. This is yarn dyed by one of my beautiful friends, Amy of the Stranded Dye Works, and I've just been getting this yarn out kind of every few days this week and just petting it and stroking it and loving it because it's so gorgeous. This is her Shiner colourway, which is this beautiful kind of grey lilac, and I have it in 2 different bases. I have it on her Kid Mohair silk blend and also her cashmere, merino cashmere nylon blend. That's Paradise and that's Drift, and this is Shiner. And the way that Soiree works is obviously that you hold this yarn double to create this incredible fluffy mohair gorgeousness of this jumper, and I want to get it cast on so badly. I originally thought that I would get this cast on and knit up before Unravel because I was supposed to be coming to spend a bit of time with Amy at Unravel this year. Unfortunately, I'm actually going to be working over the weekend of Unravel, so it's the first time in 3 years that I'm not going to be at Unravel, which is really, really sad because it's an incredible event that I would very, very much recommend that everybody go to, and show some support to some of the lovely vendors who are there. It's a gorgeous fair and I absolutely love going there, but I wanted to have this sweater to wear when I saw Amy there, but that's not going to happen. So now I will just be knitting it and thinking of her whilst I am working. I'm going to be away in Birmingham over that weekend, and I'm going to be staying in a hotel. So I'm hoping to be able to tuck up in the evenings and just get a lot of knitting done, preferably on something as gorgeous as my Soiree in this colourway. So I will be swatching for this very, very soon, and fingers crossed I shall be casting this on within the next week because I need more projects on the needles, obviously, because if I'm going to knit up all of the sweaters that I want to knit this year, I need to get a wiggle on, so yeah. Talking about Unravel, I think I should probably mention something that I haven't actually mentioned on the podcast up until now, and that is that I will be attending Edinburgh Yarn Festival this year. Hooray! I know, I'm very, very excited to be visiting Edinburgh Yarn Festival again this year. I'm not going to be kind of visiting in any kind of official capacity. I'm not part of the podcaster lounge or anything like that. It's going to be very relaxed and a very flexible visit to Edinburgh this year. One thing that I experienced last year, that it was relatively intense, and as amazing as it was, I adored every second of Edinburgh last year. I wanted to take things a little bit easier this year. So firstly, Emrys is going to be coming with me to Edinburgh, which is amazing, but it does mean that it is more of a holiday for the 2 of us, which means that I'm not entirely sure how much I will be at Edinburgh Yarn Festival. I'm hopefully going to be there for a couple of hours on a few of the days, but nothing is kind of solidified yet. I want to be able to take things, you know, easy and not kind of over plan everything too much, because then I think it's going to detract from more of the holiday feel of the visit this year. But suffice it to say, I am incredibly excited. We will be travelling up on the Thursday, so I won't be at the show on the Thursday, but I will most likely be there on the Friday and the Saturday at various times. So if you do see me at Edinburgh, do please come over and say hi. It would be lovely to meet you, so just kind of introduce yourself, and yeah, I'm always more than happy to see anybody who has watched the podcast, and it's just a lovely thing to be able to talk to lovely yarny people at yarny events. So yes, I hope that I see a lot of you at Edinburgh Yarn Festival. Yay! I'm going to be answering another Dear Katie question this week, and for those of you who don't know, Dear Katie is the interactive segment of this podcast in which you can send me a question via email, and I will either answer you directly via email or I will save your question for an episode of Inside Number 23. So if you'd like to get involved, just email me. Like I said, my email is katie@insidenumber23.com, and put in the subject title Dear Katie, and I will know that it's obviously a question for that particular segment. Ideally, please don't ask me kind of technical knitting or sewing based questions, but anything else is absolutely fine, and I look forward to hearing from you. I had a really lovely email this week that was sent to me by Linda, so thank you so much, Linda, for your email. It was absolutely lovely to hear from you, and she actually posed a really interesting question that I thought would be worth discussing on the podcast. So Linda, your question. I do have a question that has been on my mind since watching the previous episode. I, like you, am trying to live a more cruelty-free life. I stopped eating meat several years ago, although I do still eat eggs and cheese and occasionally fish, and I do make a point of buying cruelty-free products as much as possible. I see this as a journey and every step counts. I do struggle sometimes with how my knitting yarn is sourced. I do try to choose yarns that I believe are ethically sourced, but I will admit that I'm not always as vigilant as I would like to be. The fibre I struggle with the most is silk, and so far have avoided it. I do love the look of it, and must admit I'm very tempted by it. So my question is, how do you deal with that struggle of wanting to live a cruelty-free life and the desire to have luxurious, gorgeous yarns? Any tips would be greatly appreciated. As I said, this is a journey, one step at a time, and always made easier when we can share with friends. And Linda, I completely agree, and thank you so much for bringing up this subject, because this is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and I know that other people who are in a similar position to the both of us, and there's probably a lot of other people out there who are feeling the same way about wanting to live a more cruelty-free life in terms of what we use and a more sustainable life, that this is a genuine issue which can come up a lot. So first and foremost, I want to kind of preface what I'm about to say with the fact that these are my views and my opinions. I don't know everything on this subject. I am by no means the be-all and end-all when it comes to this kind of a topic. I myself am very early on in my journey towards being cruelty-free, and my dietary kind of things, which I'll talk about in a little bit. I'm still very much at the beginning of my journey, which is a word that I love that you use because it is a journey. But saying that, I know that there are some people who, when it comes to using animal products or being a vegetarian or being a vegan, they see things in a very, very black and white way, and that's absolutely fine. So if you are one of those people, please don't think that I'm saying that certain things are okay and certain things are not okay, and that I'm saying the way that things are, because I'm not. And I'm just saying this because I know it's a very touchy subject for some people, and also when it comes to going cruelty-free or swearing off animal-based products, a lot of the time there's a real emotional connection with the person who has decided to do that. So it's more than just a cerebral process for a lot of people, it is a really emotive and personal thing. So that's just me putting it out there, that my opinions, as always, are my own, and they are not meant to insult anybody, be you a meat eater or a non-meat eater or whatever. It's just a discussion. So, like I said, Linda, I really love the fact that you call this a journey that you're on, because in my experience of becoming vegetarian. That's what I refer to myself as, 100% vegetarian, since last year. I have really seen that kind of going cruelty-free, going non-animal based products or plant-based products, it is a bit of a rabbit hole, and it can swallow you entirely, and it can actually make you feel, the more you research and the more that you look into it, that you're a failure before you've even started. Because when you start looking into why you shouldn't eat meat, for example, and decide that you're going to become a vegetarian, a lot of the time the reasons that you've made those choices very easily transfer into then becoming vegan. So no dairy, no eggs, no animal products of any kind, and then it's the step after that, and the step after that, and the step after that. And even when you're just at the beginning of this journey, you can already feel like you failed, because there's so much to it. It's a subject that you could literally talk about for hours. So my advice about this when it comes to yarn is a little bit multifaceted. In terms of where I sit, I, like I said, am a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian since kind of midway through last year. And it's been something that I'm very, very happy with and very comfortable with in terms of my choices to no longer eat meat or fish. I do kind of flirt with veganism in certain ways. I do use a lot of dairy alternatives. I just think that for me, at this point in where I'm at with my food, I don't want the process to become debilitating and too rigorous and too restrictive. I want to still have some flexibility, because I know from personal experience, if I try and shut down everything too quickly, it will just not work. So it is a slow and steady journey, and who knows where I'll end up. Maybe I'll stick with being vegetarian, maybe I'll go full vegan. I don't know. I can honestly say I don't know. I think that the same thing comes when it's comes to yarn and fibre content and that type of thing in yarns. I do still use wool, obviously, and I know that there are a lot of vegans who would say that that is not something that you should do, even though I personally don't see any of these things as kind of black and white, as in, you know, setting absolutes for things I don't think is particularly helpful. But if you are completely not wanting to use any animal products whatsoever, then yes, maybe wool isn't for you. Silk in particular that you were talking about is kind of horrible in the way that it's produced, in terms of the silkworms in mass production of silk do die, and it is a luxury product, it's not a necessity product, and that may be where you sit in terms of your morals and the way that you see that, in terms of it not being a cruelty-free product and it being a luxury item. I think it's important to see where you are on the scale of whether or not you're 100% invested in just being cruelty-free and just being non-animal based, or you're trying some things and then you let other things slip. I think that it's okay, personally, and again, these are my own opinions, I think it's okay to cut yourself a bit of slack sometimes, because sometimes doing too much and being too strict on yourself, in the same way that you might be on a diet and say, I'm not going to have cakes, I'm not going to have chocolate, I'm not going to have sweets, I'm not going to have sugar, I'm not going to have carbs, I'm not going to have this, I'm not going to have that, it can actually mean that what you then do is fail quite dramatically, and then you binge and then you feel awful. I think it's important to find a balance for yourself. The fact that you are considering cruelty-free decisions in what you're buying, maybe beauty-wise, maybe in home products, it's okay to cut yourself a little bit of slack for certain things and see how you feel about it. Take the time to see how you personally feel and where you sit for things like yarn. It's lovely that you've asked my advice, but to be honest, it's not a decision that I can make for you. I think it's just something that you have to realise is probably not going to happen overnight. You may not have all of the answers right now, and that is okay, because like you said, and like I've said about 100 times in this rather rambling explanation, this is a journey, and it's okay for you to take it at the pace that's appropriate for you. If anyone ever says anything that you're doing something wrong, or that it's not okay, the decisions that you've made about something, that's fine for them. If that's their truth, allow them to have that in their own space. You just focus on you. What I would say is there are loads of yarn companies now that do offer yarn that is really ethically produced, that comes from small batches of sheep. You know, there are companies, off the top of my head, for example, Hooligans Yarns, I think are an incredible company. You actually know the name of the sheep that yarn came from when you're buying it and when you're knitting with it, and that's an absolute joy to have something that personal. Daughter of a Shepherd yarn, for example, coming from a specific flock of sheep, that you know the entire process that his yarn has gone through, from it being sheared from the sheep and being spun and then being sold. And it's really, really lovely to be able to support a small venture like that is so personal and that has so much heart to it. In particular, one thing that came to my mind when you were talking about silk blends of yarn is that I know that Samite yarn, Samite, I'm terrible with names, but Blacker Yarns yarn, I'm going to go with Samite, actually has ethically sourced silk in it. It's a particular kind of silk that I believe is Aimshire silk. I'm going to write on the screen what it is. You all know by now I'm terrible at pronunciation of these type of things, but it's the only type of silk manufacturer that allows the silkworms to live their entire lives and only collects the cocoons for their silk after they have emerged from their cocoons, which is really, really lovely. It is a little bit more expensive, obviously, because when you take the kind of processes that have been done on the cheap and you do them really well and you do them very ethically and very non-cruelty based, you do end up paying a little bit more for the luxury of having that. But it's a really beautiful blend of yarn, but it is produced really, really ethically, and obviously no little silkworms were hurt in the process of that yarn. So if you're wanting to try silk, maybe give that a try, maybe have that being your luxury item. I think that there are always ways to find something that works for you. So that's basically what I am suggesting, is take some time and find where you sit ethically and morally and emotionally within all of this, and then do right by yourself, because the very fact that you are thinking about these things and that we're having this conversation is better than going through life oblivious of all of it. I genuinely feel that actually taking these things into consideration and making an educated decision for yourself is just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So good luck, and I hope that although that has been incredibly rambly and all over the place, that has been just a little bit helpful for you. So thank you so much, Linda, for your question. I have one more thing to talk about this week, and although it's not necessarily kind of project based when it comes to my knitting, it is knitting and sewing based, and I'm really, really excited about it because it's a new thing that I've started doing this year in terms of organising my projects. Now, for those of you who have been watching the podcast for quite a long time, you will know that on several occasions I have tried to be better with putting my projects and my yarn and everything on Ravlery, and every single time I have failed abysmally. Genuinely, for some reason, I just cannot get on with Ravlery and uploading my projects. And it's a real frustration to a lot of you, I know, because it's very helpful for you guys for me to put my projects on Ravlery, but what can I say? It just doesn't gel with me. But last year I started doing a knitting journal, which was a really lovely project that I did in a little book, little A5 size book, and I would write up about my knitting projects and put in little swatches of yarn and put in my yarn labels, and that lasted for a few months and then it pretty much went out the window. I just found it difficult in the way that I put it together to think that it was actually going to be worthwhile keeping for the long term, because what I really want is a record of the amount of projects that I have been making, the things that are successful, the things that I wear, and kind of the turnaround time for things, so I can see how many projects that I make in a month, how many knitting projects versus how many sewing projects. But I am also an incredibly tactile person, which is why the journaling really appealed to me. So I decided to give this whole process a bit of an overhaul for the start of 2018, and I'm really happy with how it's going so far. Goodness knows how long this will last, and maybe it will all go by the board in a few months or so, but for now I am incredibly happy with what I've done, and I just wanted to share a little bit of it with you. So instead of a little A5 notebook that I kind of write things up in, this year I have a full-on A4 file, because I used to be one of those people who was obsessed with stationery as a child. Every September, kind of, well, August, I guess, the end of August, when you were getting ready to go back to school, one of my favourite things was to buy stationery. So buying this lovely folder was a joy. So I went for this grey colour, you know, classic grey, can't go wrong with that. But in here I am keeping a record of all of my different projects, and I am so excited with how this has turned out. So basically I created a specific skeleton, I guess you would call it, one for knitting projects and one for sewing projects on Microsoft Word. I divvied up each of the pages into different sections, and I printed out quite a lot of copies of each of them. I think I printed out maybe 10 knitting ones and 10 sewing ones, so that as I go, all I need to do is fill in the gaps of each one of these, and you get something a little bit like this. It really does feel like a school project, and I absolutely love it. So I'm going to talk you through kind of the different sections that I have on this. So this is a page for a completed project. This is for my Eureka Cow, which I finished obviously at the beginning of this month. So in terms of the layout, let me just show you. At the top I have this kind of wide box which is usually blank. So imagine that all of these sections are usually blank, because I did print out quite a few of them and I just fill them in as I go. But for the top section, this is where I put my my title of my project. So I very inventively have just called it the Eureka Cow, because that's what it is. Here in this little box I have 3 things that are pre-printed. So I have the pattern, date started and date finished, and obviously that's been filled in accordingly. Across from that I have a little bit which is titled yarn. Again, the yarn section is pre-written, and there I have stuck down my yarn label, which for this was Brooklyn Tweed Shelter, and then underneath it I have a little sample of the yarn which is held on with washi tape. And I've just written the name of the yarn just below it there, little description. I've got another box just over here underneath the pattern details, and that's one that I've just left open so that I can draw a little technical drawing of the design. So this is my little version of the Eureka Cow, and I popped in a couple of different notes about different patterns and that type of thing. Below I have a notions section. So that notions section is obviously to record which needles I've used, but also if I've used anything extra. So I suppose if I've used new stitch markers, progress keepers, anything like that. And I also have an additional notes section on this side here. So I can write anything that I've thought about this project. So for the Eureka Cow, for example, I've put that it was a super quick knit, that I knit it up in about 48 hours. I've also put that it was less than 2 skeins of the yarn that I bought for it. And then I also wrote about the fact that I'd like to adjust it if I ever knit it again, so that it would sit a little bit higher on my neck. The last little bit that I have is this section down here, which is something that I copied from my knitting journal, because being quite a visual person, this type of thing I find very, very satisfying. I have a 4-block system in terms of knowing where I am with that particular project. The first box gets filled in when the project is started, when it's cast on. The second box gets filled in when it is at about 50%, so I've done about 50% of the knitting. The third box gets filled in when the garment is completed, when all of the ends are woven in and when it is blocked. And then the fourth one, which you can see here is still not filled in, is basically when it is photographed. I do want to get into the habit of taking better photos of my finished objects because I spend so much time on them. I'd really love to be able to have lovely pictures of them when they're done, and that obviously would encourage me to create Ravelry pages for my finished objects and that type of thing, which I think would be beneficial for all of you guys. One extra little silly thing that I have added onto my project pages, because I'm a fiddly kind of detail-oriented person, and I can't help myself sometimes. Every time I have finished one of these projects, it gets a little label sewn, kind of tied rather, in the top corner, which, if you can see, says fin, so it's finished. And so this is obviously a completed knitting project, and it goes into the lovely filing system and it's kept in here. I'm also putting in projects in terms of when I am starting them throughout the year. So I already have, I haven't done all of my projects that are currently on my needles, but I have my forest cardigan in here. You can see I'm very proud of that little technical drawing just there. I already have my little yarn sample for that one. I also have my completed Cleo dress in here, which I will just be grabbing out so that you can have a look at the difference between knitting and sewing. So this is the Cleo dress that I finished this year. This is the denim version, and in terms of the layout, it's incredibly similar to the knitting one with a couple of little differences. It still has the title block along the top, so this is Cleo 2.0, as it's the second version of this pattern that I've ever knit. I still have the pattern, the date started and the date finished, and then this big blank area for technical drawings. So for sewing, I've done the front and back view of the pattern. It has the same little progress kind of bar here, but across to this side it has fabric rather than yarn, and I have just stapled in a little swatch of my fabric. Still has the notes section at the bottom, still has this kind of ridiculous little finish label on the top, which I'm a little bit obsessed with. But yes, this is how I'm going to be recording all of my knitting and sewing projects from now onwards, and I am really, really happy with how it's going so far. One of the things that I love about it is that it's fully adaptable because I'm adding it in a page as you go. If I ruin something or do a mistake, you know, because I'm using kind of different kind of styles of writing and that type of thing, if I do something that I don't like, I can just redo it. Whilst in a notebook, it's kind of really annoying when you mess up a page and you think, oh, that looks a bit rubbish in comparison to the other ones, but you don't want to rip the page out. I also think it's lovely because it has the option to be able to grow. So I'm thinking that I might print photos of some of my projects. I might be able to add more writing after a particular project, so if something's been particularly successful, I may be able to add more project notes afterwards, and I'm really, really enjoying it. It's a lovely thing to get out in the evening. We have a little kind of folding table in the living room with a little almost desk tray kind of arrangement on top of it, and I love laying out all of my sheets of paper. I have some really nice almost felt tip type pens that I'm using for all of the writing in these, and I just like getting those out and just drawing and writing. It's very, very therapeutic and I'm loving every second of it. I also love the slightly more minimalist feel that this has than my other knitting journal, because the majority of it is all in black and white. That's really, really appealing to me. And yeah, I just think so far it's been a really lovely practical way of keeping track of my projects, but it's still interesting, it's still fun, and it still has kind of some creative elements to it, like doing nice text for the writing, adding in the little samples and the little labels, and fingers crossed I will be filling up an entire file with projects this year. That is the goal. And the nice thing will be is that obviously if I continue to do this, I will have lots of different files to be able to look back on and see projects from kind of years gone by and that type of thing. So yeah, I wonder if any of you guys are doing similar things this year in terms of knitting journals or in terms of organising your products, your projects rather, in the way that I've done with this. I'd love to hear if you have any additional things that you kind of record when you're making like records of what you've been working on. It would be really, really great to know what you've been up to with that. But I hope that you like mine because I'm really, really enjoying it so far. And it's a nice change of pace when I've been doing a lot of knitting and sewing to just kind of sit down and get that all up to date, and I love it. Plus, having the sheets printed out already is just such an amazing thing. It's such a time saver, believe me. I absolutely love it. So guys, that is everything from the episode this week. Thank you so much for bearing with me for another week of waffling on about knitting and sewing and all of that good stuff. If you've enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up or hit subscribe. If you'd like to be kept up to date as to when there are new videos on the channel, fingers crossed I will be able to get this up promptly for you, and that there won't be a huge amount of time where I'm saying it's up, no it's not, it's up, no it's not, like I have over the kind of past couple of videos that I've done. But yes, I hope you all have an incredible week. I will be back same time next week with another upload of the podcast for you, and in the meantime, if you have any questions, email me or check me out on Twitter or Instagram. For now, from me to you, I love you all so much. I hope you all have an incredible week filled with all of the crafty goodness that your hearts can stand, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye!